How you doing, everybody? I thought today that I'd cover the reed intakes on two-stroke chainsaws. Some chainsaws have Pioneers, one of them does. Some of the Home Lights. And try to explain them and explain the difference between non-reed. And I actually had a method of my madness here because this is a set of V-Force reeds out of that CR500. The one problem with reeds over time is you see the chipping and the cracking there. This is something that they do. These are carbon fiber reeds, but they do chipping one thing or another in the corners. So while I'm talking to you about the reeds, we're going to assemble a set of reeds for this bike. Cullen one night when he gets home early, unless he ain't home more often than normal. Let me tell you what Cullen does. He was in the Marines. Obviously, he worked on jets. He was at Cherry Point, and he was a jet mechanic. Now, isn't this weird that that job translated directly toward troubleshooting that he learned doing that job? And he's learned servos and motors and, everything under the sun in the military working on jets. It qualified for him for a job to be a commercial appliance repairman. Yeah. He works in like school systems, restaurants. He travels quite a area. Well, now he might slow down a bunch, so I was just wanting to make sure that if it happened where he got a day or two off here and there or more, however it works, he can keep right on going with his little project here. And now what reeds do, screwdrivers, what reeds do, they control your intake and exhaust timing. This particular two-stroke bike is the intake is in a cylinder in a normal position, and the reeds are controlled there. But they trench the bottom of the intake so that the timing is far, far more drastic than a non-reed two-stroke. So there's one type of reed. It goes in a traditional right ahead of the carburetor, right into the cylinder. The other type, they're case fed, like Buchan's P38. That's case fed reeds. That means in the cylinder, there's no opening where an intake normally would be. It goes down into the case, right down into the crank. I like that design much better, honestly, because they'll develop more power and they're a little more accurate. They will develop more power. The case-fed reeds are the way to go. Now, when your piston comes from bottom dead center and is traveling up, I can do what I normally wouldn't do because these reeds aren't any good. I can lift this up. Okay, the reed pedal actually does this. It opens. It's sucking air fuel in. Yeah, all of them will be open. When it goes to top dead center and fires, it closes, and on the downstroke, it doesn't do anything. Piston changes direction when it needs to bring air into the crankshaft area. It doesn't matter what type of, whether it's in the cylinder or in a case fed, they do the same thing. Piston starts moving up, creates a vacuum, opens the reed, air fuel. Comes top dead center, and on the way down, nothing. But on the way down, it is shoving the air fuel charge that was in there up the transfers. Okay, because it's just the way it works. It's got to go somewhere, and that's what it does. So that makes it kind of fun. Now, I was talking to Bill Block this morning, and he asked me a couple questions, and he says, well, that reeds make a constant timing. No, they don't. When they're idling, they'll snap shut much quicker, and they won't open as far, okay? As your RPMs increase, they'll open further and close a little slower. That reed cannot close as fast as what the saw's running. Or the dirt bike. You're not going to get, unless you're leaned right out, you're not going to get a reed dirt bike or chainsaw to what we call hit. That means the reeds have opened and it's got all its power. Without load. It has to have a load. It has to be working, creating more vacuum, trying to pull the RPMs up. That's what the whole thing is. Now, when you get right up towards your peak RPM, them reeds are open a long time, and they're opening quite a ways. They're just fluttering. So yeah, they're probably open all the time to some degree at RPMs. So, knowing that, it only makes sense that you can see that when the RPMs drop off, the tension that's in the reeds, super control how much air fuel is going in. It's it's an on-demand system. It really is. And here's a classic right here. So hopefully you can see that. The edge of them reeds are just chipped and busted. These reeds would have run a while longer, but the performance level wouldn't have been there. They just wouldn't have. So I'm going to strip this reed cage down. Now, this is a proper reed cage. Now, like the Pioneers, they got just like a tongue reed. It's a single pedal. Okay. The good news is you can vary the thickness of your reed to tailor your when that comes in. A thicker reed takes longer to hit. Let's call it that. Let's just get used to hearing that hit. That means it's got its power. Under load, it's got to hit. Thicker reeds hit later. They don't have the tendency to open quite as far, but more than enough. But they'll close more at a higher RPM. So later hit, harder hit. Let's use that as an example. That P51 that I built Buck and Billy is a single reed. I did thin the reed. I wanted a best of both worlds there. I definitely made it better than stock by thinning the reed, the performance of the saw overall. You'll have, I set the thickness to where that it has ample power in the car. I mean, strong power. We do the same thing with bikes. We want that high mid-range power, or low, high RPM power, however you want to look at it. And, boy, these reeds was really bad. Now we're saving them because I'll cut them and make reeds for something smaller. I don't throw them away. So the P38 that I built Bucking is a much smaller saw. And we used a Boysen 2-stage reeds. Yes, you can get Boysen 2-stage reeds for the Pioneer saws. Now what that is, it has two pedals. Instead of being just one pedal, it's two right on top of each other like that. But this one is solid. The top one would be solid. This one would have a hole in it. Okay? And that's varying thickness. In the P38, I took the Boysen reeds. I thinned the top reed probably about 4 or 5 thousandths, so that it would open a little quicker. And then when it really gets to drawing, the bottom reed opens too. So the one reed goes boom like that. The second reed opens like that when it needs to. It's like a double hit. It lengthens that hit out. What it does. This isn't really debatable. I'm sure I opened myself wide open for people who don't thought like I used to think about reeds. Oh, you need nice, heavy, big reeds. Get that bam, bam, bam going. There's some applications you don't want a massive hit by having a thick reed. You do have an advantage by being able to control when the reed closes better with a thick reed. But there's 2 times I don't want that. A way, way over horsepowered motocross bike, I don't want that big hit. I mean, it's massive. And a very serious chainsaw, I don't want a massive hit. I do not. You can't do nothing with them. You can't limb with them. And you got to have it buried in big wood. Now, we toned that down in Buckland's P51. It's because of nature of the beast. It has good, strong power in the cut. But it's not a limbing saw, as he pointed out. But with this little deal with these reeds, it's pretty interesting. Now, these particular reeds here, they're V-Force. These are a very, very good quality reed, though you dirt bike guys know already. I ain't got to tell you. I know exactly. Now, we found out something. These ain't the V-Force 3s. These are their original design. This is the first ones that they built. We did have a heck of a time getting the new reed pedals, but we did do it. They're out of stock. They don't make them anymore in about 8-9 years. So we got them. We're putting it together. But we don't want this bike to be an absolute maniac. Is what we don't want. So we're going to tone it way down. You know what makes me nervous? When I see screws in there that are missing, I don't like that. That scares me. Yeah, it does. Now, that takes a really tiny little Allen. I got one right there. I'm going to jump right up a minute and grab that. Get that apart. But there definitely is one of them missing. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. I didn't have a choice. Well, I got the in-between sizes. You know, you run into this all the time. Normally I'd have a paper towel down here. So we might be calling that toilet paper, so I didn't want to use them if I didn't have to. It is what it is, isn't it? Good job. So, now, I hope you understand the reed part of it. Now, let's explain what not reeds are. Okay, great. We understand that reeds control intake timing. If you don't have reed, what controls that? The piston skirt. Okay? Get this pretty piston out. I'll explain that using that. When your intake's open, the piston's up above. Let's say this is the floor of the intake. When it comes down, closes the port, goes by, comes back up. Okay? That's what does it. It's just port timing on the intake. I haven't covered that really yet because you guys asked for numbers. On the intake, I will not give numbers, but I'll tell you what a personal rule is. I do not want to see that piston be open for more than 160 degrees on that intake. Okay? You start, and I like to see 156, 158 even, but you could push it a little, not affect some of the bigger saws and stuff. But like a 50cc saw, 60cc, don't do that. Also, the exhaust. I really don't like to see them open more than 160 degrees. Okay, so let's say you push the intake and the exhaust both to 160. That's 320. Okay, so that leaves you basically, let's call it a 20-degree variance. 20 degrees up, 20 degrees down. It absorbs half of that, is what it does. And so to generate your numbers, see where you're at, see how many degrees it's already open. Don't exceed 160. Some of your best running saws that you'll ever build are at 100 to 102 degrees on the exhaust. That's how long it stays open. Okay? Smaller saws. You start getting smaller, 108. Yeah, if you're at 50 cc's, 108. Because you already don't want to lose the torque. The more you decrease your exhaust timing, the more torque you have potentially lost. You're going to gain power, but there is an acceptable loss of your torque, okay? Once you go too far on your exhaust timing, you're killed off your torque, okay? So that's why I come up with them numbers from the exhaust side only. I like to see my transfer start opening within 25 to 28 degrees of the exhaust opening, okay? 20 degrees is fine. I do not like seeing my intake, period, open more than 160 degrees, period. I do not push that number. A lot of mine are a lot less than that. Because in one direction, you gain. But then it doesn't close. Now that's non-reed. That's like most chainsaws are. So even though you're gaining in one direction, the other direction, you're created a leak. Let's call it that. You just created a leak. So that's really what it is. I don't want to turn my little light on so I can see good. So you just got to bear with me, watching me fart around with this. I actually went uptown today, this morning early, because we're low on shop towels, the blue ones. I use Bounty too, and I use a lot of brake parts cleaner. I can find all kinds of brake parts cleaner. Well, then I got it. Shop towels, really? They're gone? Not worried. Come home, kind of grumbling to Barb about that. Oh, she says, don't worry. She says, she says, I've got a couple bags of rags. If you need some rags, we'll give you some rags. Now, see, this has an inner reed cage. Okay? Right there, the inner reeds are. 4 reeds in the V-Force reeds. You got inners and outers. Now, a common reed cage only has 2 outers. Chainsaws generally have 1 reed, period, and that's it. No matter whether it goes in the intake in the cylinder or it goes down through into the case by the crank. They got 1 reed as a rule. Okay. But you can put a double pedal in them saws by buying Boysen 2-stage reeds. Okay? You know that. I see that because we're missing one of them bolts, we're going to have to make a trip to the hardware to get them, which we can do. Now, see, these inner pedals aren't too bad a shape. But I do want to show you a little something. I hope that this picks that up. There is blistering. There is blistering on that pedal. That's from flame. Okay. Heat did that. When the outer pedals started failing, it wasn't sealing up. At the same time, we had a piston that was leaking by it. So it was catching the fuel on fire in the bottom of the case. The reeds failed and wouldn't seal. The interior reeds sealed, but it's blistering them from the heat. Okay? And then this is what happens. If your rings have been compromised, you can get to the point just like the CR500, and it actually ran pretty good. It just didn't hit very good. And then it got where it didn't hit at all, and Cullen said, no, I ain't riding it. He said, there's something wrong with us. Good job, Cullen. That's exactly what you need to do. Be aware of what you're running. Okay? Just be aware. Now, the next whole big trick on this is how positive are we that we have the right reeds. Well, we're going to find out right now. Oh boy, we're good shape. Yep, we got them. I'm not going to bore you with assembling these on video. It was more about taking them apart and visiting with you, getting something done at the same time. But we're good. We are good. I'm loving this. People, I know you love a good story, but you ever get in a position in life you're just not in the mood to tell a good story? How about I just tell you something that it'll sink home. It's something I didn't think I'd ever say on video. But you remember 1972, those of you who's been around, you probably heard your parents talk about it. The energy crisis. Well, that's where you got long gas lines. You couldn't buy gasoline. Okay, here we didn't have a problem. We're small country communities, but you could ration gas. They ration gas. Well, Dad worked in construction an hour and a half away. He owned his own construction company. It got right down where that he couldn't get gas enough for the trucks to go to work. So he started staying up in Rochester and got where he couldn't even get enough gas to come home on Friday. And not only that, but diesel fuel and one thing and another for the project sites became non-existent really fast in the cities. So during the heyday, you got 6 months, 7 months of good construction weather. It was hit and miss. It was terrible. At the same time, you can't hardly afford gas to put in your vehicle to go to town. Well, yeah, there was the same thing as going on right now. People panicking. So what they do is take every gas can they can buy. You couldn't buy a gas can for 3 months, 4 months. You couldn't buy one. And I mean, we had gas cans, fuel cans, and it's like it was a toilet paper all over again. Oh, what do you mean you can't buy a gas can? They were hoarding gas. Well, that made a tough year. What was I, 11 that year? Born in 61, yeah, 71. 11, 12 years old. I turned 12 in January. That made money get pretty tight down here. Yeah, it did. Well, when you got a lack of money, just about figure out how to pay your electric bill. Of course, we heated with wood. You know, we got milk off the farm. And, but everything was tight. So we really started cutting a lot of firewood and selling firewood. Brought big money back then. $20 a cord, $15 a cord. But you could normally make a living at it. By fall, you could get gas again. It wasn't quite so bad. But, I mean, it was bad enough still. But it was expensive then. The prices didn't ever go back down either. You remember that? So, yeah, you guys heard in toilet paper, just jacked your price of toilet paper up. It's going to stay. Nah, I don't think it will. It's just the potential's there. It will drive a recession of sorts. This is what it's going to do. You're going to get panic does that. So, we're cutting firewood, and we're managing to pay the bills that way. But, boy, I tell you what, there wasn't no room left for food. No, there was not. Work your butt off. Just work your butt off for a little or nothing. Just to keep going. You know, I'll tell you what, that whole darn winter, I'll tell you what we ate. Venison and pancakes. Yep. Here and there we'd get eggs. But eggs went up. All food did. Venison and pancakes. And if you didn't have, we raised our own potatoes on the farm. We had all kinds of potatoes. If you didn't have eggs and venison and pancakes, it was venison and potatoes, boiled potatoes. And at first we started out, we had oatmeal. But when we got into that, I didn't like cornflakes. They like, my parents like cornflakes too much. And I got wore out on cornflakes. And then I got seriously wore out on the oatmeal. And, but venison and pancakes. One meal to another, and occasionally fried. If you didn't have that, it's fried or boiled potatoes. And sometimes nothing on it, no butter, no gravy, no nothing. Just sometimes. It was rough times, man. And you just go out and you work. That was the days that we wore old holy socks, doubled them up so the holes mismatched on your hands because you couldn't afford your gloves. Yep. You put bread bags in your boots to keep your feet from being wet. And you know what Dad told me? He says, I had it way tougher than this growing up as a kid. He said, this is nothing. It's absolutely nothing. And he was right. But, you know, I look back on them. We actually had a few years things got pretty touchy. And, boy, you just learn to conserve. You learn to grow your own food. You learn to make do with what you got. We have right now untested society. It is. It's the old people has endured the hard times. There's very few of them left. Real hard times, you know, the World War II people. But there's people that know what tough is. Just, I mean, there's certain states that their world's not going to change. What's it going to affect? They already got it hard, you know. Like West Virginia. That's a tough place. Them people, they know what hard is. And did you notice that West Virginia, the last I looked, was the only state on the map that wasn't in a danger area for coronavirus? And they're the ones going to get through this. The people that's relaxed and just accept it, endure. I loved you guys' comments. I really did. Some of them came to mind so easy that we will survive this. Our ancestors did. Perfect comment. And the proof that they did is we're here living. So it's in our blood to be survivors and look out for each other. Do look out for each other. Do. You know, that's a good thing to be doing. I am probably learning more from you guys than you're learning from me. I noticed that in the comments. I just have a different way. I'm right here up front talking to only you. One person at a time. I get to hear every day in the comments from many people words of wisdom. Keep them comments rolling. That's my entertainment. Okay, I want this video up. I want to say I love you. And I'm glad you're here and I'm glad you're watching. Pay attention. We'll have some cool things coming up here momentarily. Goodbye.